Okay, happy Saturday afternoon, everyone. My name is Christian Ogenfus. I'm with the Napa Valley Wine Academy, and it's my pleasure today to welcome you to our study hall and special interview with Warren Winiarski, famous Napa Valley Vintner. And we also have one of our premier instructors, MW student, diploma graduate, Monika Vescovi, here to interview Warren as well. So let me bring those two honored guests onto our screen, and we'll get the interview. Started. Welcome both of you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, we're so thrilled to have you, Warren, here with us today. Just in short, to give you a description of Warren's amazing achievement. His Cabernet Sauvignon took a first place in the 1976 Judgment of Paris. In 2017, Winiarski was included into California Hall of Fame for his global efforts to showcase and preserve quality of California wines. And just recently, in 2019, he was awarded Jameson Smith Bicentennial Medal in recognition of his contribution to America wine making. So we met with Warren in 2017 in Poland at the Czasbina Award ceremony, where he was awarded Person of the Year award. Winiarski in Polish means from wine making. And it's amazing looking at all of the achievements of Warren to see that he hasn't only been a cool winemaker that Napa Valley is very proud of. He's also have been an amazing person that has been preserving Napa Valley. And since 1968 Agricultural Preservation Act, he's been working very hard to allow Napa Valley winemakers today and all of us enjoy this amazing valley that is intact, that has this beautiful nature around. So what we're going to discuss today is viticulture challenges in Napa Valley. Warren, welcome.
Thank you.
To our
Good to be with you.
So, my first question to you is, what are the climatic conditions at your Coombsville's AVA, Arcadia Vineyard, and how do they influence your vineyard management?
Yeah, all right. Well, Coombsville is in the southern part of the valley, and this valley is primarily divided into three zones with respect to heat accumulation. And that heat, and we are dominated in this valley by what happens in the Gulf of Alaska, because the water that comes down the coast and goes past Washington and Oregon and California and gets out to around San Diego, the southern part of the state, and then it goes west toward Hawaii. That is a circuit of water whose temperature dominates the Bay Area, because the air that passes over that water cools our area, and it cools the southern part of the valley most, the middle part of the valley next most, and the northern part of the valley after that. So in three heat zones, we're in the coolest. We're like the coastal because we're most dominated by that marine air and its temperature. And that is all determined by something called the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, which is one wheel in a bigger wheel among other wheels that determines that water is warmer or cooler. And in a cool year, it's quite cool. And so the southern part of the valley is appropriate for cool climate grapes or grapes at the margin of Cabernet. Our particular vineyard has both Chardonnay and Cabernet. It's different from in Bordeaux, where Chardonnay and Burgundy, in Burgundy it's much cooler, and they don't grow Cabernet. In the Napa Valley, we can do both.
So how would you translate that into a style of wines that can come from the wines that you from the vines that you're growing in your vineyard? Well, that cooler influence. What style, in comparison to other Napa Valley districts, can you achieve in Coombsville?
Well, there's higher acidity in the Chardonnay and higher acidity also in the Cabernet, but it's at the margin for Cabernet and it's right in the center for Chardonnay. So we can take advantage of our volcanic soils for the Cabernet and our alluvial soils for the Chardonnay. And those soils are also determined by a subsoil that gives Chardonnay its freshness and its liveliness and its perry qualities. And for the Cabernet on the volcanic soils, it gives it also freshness for a red wine and doesn't give it a heaviness. It gives it a lighter characteristic and a freshness similar to what is done with the Chardonnay. So it has both. It's possible to grow them both at that area in the valley.
So we are here in a Mediterranean climate. If you see in a window behind me, it's quite dark here today. It's slow gloomy, it's raining. And before we started this interview, we were talking with Warren about the rains at this time of the year. So how would the rains at this time later in the season influence the vineyard management? What's going to happen? Because you mentioned that this is not a good time for a rain to be coming into the vineyards. What's happening now? What's going to happen due to the rain?
Well, if you were to come to our vineyard today, you would see a beautiful blanket of yellow from the mustard plants, which are the cover crop to prevent erosion in the heavy rains and preserve the texture of the soil, because we want to incorporate that. And because it's raining and because we're concerned with vehicles going in and getting the cover crop mowed and incorporated into the ground after it's done its work, we can't do that because compaction is a problem. And so we're prevented from getting our work done, which means everything is going to be delayed after this. Everything will be more compressed after this period of wet soil where we can't go in. If it were to rain, we would love for the rain to happen in the fall and in the winter and leave us a slowly drying out soil so we can get all these other viticultural operations done before we have leaf out. Now we have in the Chardonnay leaf out and we can't get in on the soil.
We didn't have that much rain this year, right?
No, we're in a drought year. I doubt whether we've had 13 or 14 inches of rain in our vineyard total. We might get a little more now, but farmers are never happy. They could always have it some other way, more to their convenience. And if we had our wish, we would have no rain now. Finish our work, get working with the vines as they develop, as the shoots elongate. We would love to do that, but someone else or something else loves it some other way, and they're stronger than we are.
Yeah, nature has its way. So talking about the drought and its influence on your vineyard management, there are restrictions in Coombsville AVA when it comes to water use. What are those restrictions, and why are they there?
Yeah, this is a groundwater area where it's not abundant. So we're restricted to 1/3 of an acre foot per acre annually. And we're below that. We don't irrigate except to keep the vines moving, not to have them slow down. And that's very important to get the maximum elongation, the leaf area established for that vegetative aspect of the vine's life, annual cycle. And we like to do that early. And so we withhold any irrigation until the vine shows it absolutely has, and that's much later in the season. So we're below that 1/3 of an acre foot per vine. It amounts to about 35 to 40 gallons that we apply in the course of the last part of the season.
So what are your major pests and diseases in your vineyards, in your area, and how do you combat them?
Well, fundamentally, we're pretty good about diseases because as we have a normal dry spring, late spring, and summer, almost completely dry, fungal diseases are at a minimum. Still, Vitis vinifera is very sensitive to fungal diseases, mildew of various kinds. So that's our major problem. And we apply sulfur and we apply other materials to the leaves and to the fruit in order to prevent mildew. So we have a normal canopy, a more normal leaf contribution to the annual cycle. And this is our major problem. This is our significant problem, and that is controlled pretty well by applications.
Okay, so we talk a lot about the global warming and warmer weather patterns in Napa Valley all throughout the world. So what has changed in your vineyards over the years with noticeable warmer weather patterns, and how did you adjust your vineyard management to those warmer weather patterns?
Yeah, well, the warmer pattern is significantly shortens some of the parts of that phenology, which is the descriptive term for the cycles that the vine goes through in its annual life. And some of those periods are shortened. So we have to respond to that to be sure we're not only, if we had 1 acre vineyard, it would be no problem. The fact that we have almost 90 acres of vineyard, we have to be sure we start the process in the curve so that we start before we have to with the projects that we need to do, so that we get complete with the timing, and our timing to do the work coincides with the vine's needs for timing, and that gives us a little spread because we have 2 varieties. We actually have 3. We have Cabernet, Merlot, and Chardonnay. And so Chardonnay starts early, and we start early with the Chardonnay. So by the time Cabernet is later, we are later. We have already done the Chardonnay, and so we're now starting the Cabernet, but we must be very, very time sensitive to the vine's compression of its various stages of that annual cycle. And we have to have all our tractors ready, all our tractor drivers ready, all the machinery in perfect working. So there's no missteps on our part, and we're timing more perfectly with and losing no stitch in time with respect to what we have to do.
And that's also challenging because we know that the labor in Napa Valley is a challenge. How do you deal with that? That perfect timing of everything that needs to be done in your vineyard.
Yeah. Did you say night work?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's it. We do some work at night with light.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did have a chance to actually take a part of one of the night harvests, which was an amazing experience. I spent there all night from about 1 o'clock till 6, so when the sun was rising. And surprisingly enough, the thing that I learned there, it was that the moment the sun is rising, it's the coolest time in the vineyard.
Yeah. So right now, I'm sure you slept better the next night because you stayed up. So because we have this fantastic thing of lights, we can do some of the work at night and catch up if we're behind. It's very important to stay in tune with the vine's annual life cycle and for these various stages and not get behind. Once you're behind, you're lost. So the fact that we can work at night gives us a little break as opposed to before when they didn't have lights. And you did it for harvest, and that's also to get the right time to pick the grapes in the winemakers to fulfill the winemaker's need for fulfilling his objective, his vision of the perfection for his kind of wine, his or hers.
That is very, very important, right? Because there are two visions: the vision of the vineyard owner of how the vines are progressing within the year, and then the vision of a winemaker of the style of wine they're going to make in that particular year. They have to go hand in hand. One last question before we answer some questions from the audience. The fire hazards that Napa faces. This is a big problem that we're seeing over the last years. In the fall, Napa tends to have now severe fire problems. How is that affecting your vineyards? I know back in 2017 there were some fires around your vineyard as well. What can you do as a vineyard owner? What are the techniques that you can use to protect yourself? Can you protect yourself?
Yeah, well, part of our 2017 was the year that we had the big fire. And we lost equipment, we lost barns, we lost outbuildings, we lost all the major components which we now have replaced. But what we're doing now, because we have oak forest near us, we are clearing the underbrush. We are cutting the canopy of the oaks near us higher so that we can, if there's a grass fire, we're not affected. It doesn't get up into the tree canopy. So we're doing all the things we can do, forest management for the forest near us that would be impacted by another fire. All of that work proceeds independent of what goes on in the vineyard. That's in an effort to minimize. We can't escape the possibility, but we can minimize the possibility of a fire affecting us again. That was the year I went to Poland, just after the big fire. Yeah, where I first met you. Yes.
That's
and
right.
had the opportunity to get the award you talked about earlier.
That's right. And I remember you had to go go back early. You didn't have to have a chance to visit some of the vineyards because of interventions that had to happen here. Christian, do we have any questions from the audience? Okay, so the question is Coombsville colder than Carneros? Can you talk about the differences?
No, Carneros is the nearest to that maritime influence. And we are near Carneros in some respects. The heat distribution is a little different. They are cooler at night. They are cooler in the dawn, the early part of the day, and they start their coolness. It's a little differently distributed, and we get warmer during the day than Carneros generally because there are prevailing northerly breezes that are coming with that maritime intrusion. So we're a little warmer than Carneros. Carneros is the coolest.
So the question is, how has the winemaking changed since the judgment of Paris? What did you notice in the changes here in the Napa Valley?
Well, you mean my personal? I'm not making wine anymore, but the influence, my style, was not seeking maximum ripeness. My style of wine was seeking, if I might be so bold as to say, I'd rather have a beauty in the wine than a powerful wine. And so that California is capable of richness, it's capable of ripeness, it's also capable of restraint, what I call the 3 R's. And so that last element has to be in order to make it something that has not only volume, but a beautiful character. I think that style is being followed by the winery. And I think there's a shift in the general winemaking objectives, aspirations for red wine in particular, from merely concentrated on power and volume and concentrating on realizing there's a limit to power, and because that limit is imposed on us as human beings, we're capable of fatigue, and fatigue and beauty don't really go very well together.
Well, beautifully said. Okay, so besides the 1970 Cabernet Sauvignon, what's the best wine you have made, and who do you consider as your mentor?
Well, the 1978 wine was very good. By that time, we had a cask 23, and it became the cask 23. The 2001 was a very good year. By the way, 1978 was preceded by 2 drought years, 76 and 77. And both of those were around the same level of rainfall, 15 inches, 12 inches. This year was about 15 inches. And that imposes a certain restraint on self-imposed restraint. So 2001 was similar, not preceded by a drought year, but it had all those elements that you would want in balance. And so there are a number after that. There are a number of different ones that, but they're all your children when you make them. So it's hard to be it's hard to be fair and political at the same time.
Okay. So who was your mentor over the years? Did you have one?
Well, I had three, actually. I had the luck to be apprenticed. I didn't go to enology school, but I had as my teacher a man named Lee Stewart, for whom no detail was too small not to be considered important. And then I had another teacher whose name is Robert Mondavi, more familiar to you, for whom there was no goal that could not be exceeded. And then there was Andrei Chelyshev, who was also a mentor, a consultant, and a friend, for whom everything and the most important element of wine was beauty.
Well,
so those are my three teachers.
And as we've seen over the years, your wines represented all that beauty as well. Well, I would like to thank you very much for spending this Saturday afternoon with us, Warren. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, your experiences with us, and thank you for this interview. So thank you very much for joining us here at Napa Valley Wine Academy Facebook Live. We will bring to you several interviews where you will be able to learn and to study with us about the word of wine.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. It was my pleasure.
Well, Warren and Monika, it was a great honor to host you today for this fantastic interview. And as Monika alluded to, join us back here on Monday at noon this time, 2 hours earlier, because we will be hosting Elizabeth Gabby, MW, who will be broadcasting live from Provence and talk about the Rosé Revolution with Monika Vescovi. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. A special thanks to Warren Winiarski for taking the time today. And I'm wishing you all of you, a healthy and safe Saturday. Cheers.